the White House. Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, this is the greatest, and I'm choosing my words now very carefully. This is the greatest diplomatic self-inflicted wound, I think, in diplomatic history. I never have seen anything like what transpired Friday in the Oval Office in the meeting between President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and, of course, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's what took place there is one for the ages. Here was President Trump extending to him the full courtesy of a meeting in front of the media before a private luncheon, and then an agreement that they were going to sign for a rare earth minerals deal. And to understand how important that rare earth minerals deal is, it is a $500 billion U.S. investment in Ukraine. $500 billion. One of the biggest investments in the history of Ukraine. And as many people close to Trump said, it would economically, commercially anchor the United States in Ukraine for 10 generations to come. In other words, it was a commercial tripwire. If after this deal, Russia breaks a ceasefire, then effectively the United States will have very strong financial, economic interests to defend Ukraine. On top of that, they were already putting together pieces in place whereby there were going to be European peacekeeping forces on the ground, led by the British, led by the French, led by the other Europeans. And remember, Britain and France are nuclear powers. So if there is a final peace deal, not only is America all in economically invested in Ukraine, but basically Vladimir Putin would be at war with Europe, two of them being nuclear powers. It's as close to a full security guarantee as anybody with half a brain could possibly comprehend. But not Midget Man. Not that con man and grifter Zelensky. No, 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 no. First of all, when you meet the President of the United States for one of the most important agreements and deals in the history of Ukraine, number one, in the history of your own country, number two, in the history of the 21st century, because not only was this a massive rare earth minerals deal package investment, but it was clearly the stepping stone to ending the worst war in Europe since 1945. And the worst war that we've had so far in that part of the world in the 21st century. At least show up in a freaking suit. The disrespect was there in the way he dressed and carried himself. He came in military pants and a sweatshirt. You can't make this up. I'm sorry. He came dressed like a slob. And that showed you right there how rude, how arrogant, how demeaning, how disrespectful, how insolent this man is. And then it just got worse. It was a 50-minute meeting in front of the cameras. To be fair, I saw the whole thing. I saw it twice. The first 80% of it was fairly cordial. I mean, Zelensky would contradict Trump needlessly. He would attack Trump or J.D. Vance needlessly. But the president was in a good mood. He wanted to make this minerals deal happen. He wants to bring about a final enduring peace agreement. So he let things slide. But then things got ugly with about 15 minutes left. It was the last 15 minutes where Zelensky imploded, and with it, any chance of a deal, any chance of bringing peace to Ukraine. It began with this: a question from a reporter who was going on to Trump and JD. Why aren't you vilifying Putin more? Why aren't you castigating Putin more? Why aren't you demonizing, vilifying Putin more? And J.D. Vance turned around and said, look, all Biden did was thump his chest and call Putin a war criminal and a dictator and a human rights violator. And he called him every name in the book. And where did that get us? It got us 3 years of slaughter, of literally millions and millions of people dead, maimed, or displaced. A meat grinder. Listen now to JD. Roll cut 5, Mike.
So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Now, what's the problem? Because the media is savaging JD. The European left, the European governments, the Democrats, and the media are trying to make JD into the bad guy. They're like, he had to show this big mouth off. This was a setup. It was a setup. JD and Trump wanted to derail the negotiations. This is as Schumer said, they're doing Putin's dirty work. Are you people on drugs? Like, seriously, are you on drugs? They had a lavish lunch planned for Zelensky. They rolled out the red carpet. They were going to sign one of the most consequential economic agreements in the history of the United States and Ukraine. That was going to take us to a major step towards ending that war. And you think they want to, blow it up on purpose? All J.D. Vance says is he's criticizing Biden. He's not criticizing anybody else but Biden. Saying, look, his tough guy act didn't work. And calling Putin names hasn't worked. Let's see if diplomacy can end this war. JD said nothing wrong. But there was Midget Man. He was spoiling for a fight. He came in, and by the way, what many White House officials who were there are telling the media, you didn't see Zelensky when the cameras were on Trump or J.D. Vance. Zelensky kept rolling his eyes every time Trump or J.D. spoke. He would fold his arms. He would turn his head and move his head and face derisively, like, oh, I have to put up with these idiots. Oh, these Americans are so stupid. They know nothing about Ukraine. They know nothing about Vladimir Putin. They know nothing about what is going on in the last 10 years in my country. And then, remarkably, this is the moment everything went downhill. JD said what I just played, and then Midget Man looked right at JD's face and said this. What you know about diplomacy, JD? Roll cut 5A, Mike.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now the President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014?
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people are been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him.
So he's saying, what he's really saying is American diplomacy is good for nothing. So he starts off with, well, yeah, you guys can talk to me all you want about ceasefires, and you guys can talk to me all about diplomacy till the cows come home. But diplomacy do nothing. Diplomacy no stop Vladimir Putin. So, in other words, he's saying, what he's saying is, I don't really care for your diplomacy. I don't really care for your ceasefires. Now, I'm going to play one more cut coming back in, then I want to start to take calls. But the cut is, Putin breaks ceasefire after ceasefire. So, in other words, I don't trust you to guarantee the peace in Ukraine. And then all hell broke loose. 619 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, the question now is, did Zelensky just commit political suicide? And can there even be a peace deal? It's increasingly looking like he's not just blown himself up, but he's blown this potential deal that would save countless lives, maybe World War III. He blew it sky high Friday. So, just to quickly recap, he comes into the White House. Oh, it was a bad sign when the guy isn't wearing a suit. That pretty much, you want to start, you want to slap the President of the United States in the face and the Oval Office. You come for one of the most important historic deals of the 21st century, and you can't even put on a lousy suit and tie. Okay, but let that go. He's constantly shaking his head. He's constantly rolling his eyes. He's constantly making funny faces at Trump and J.D. Vance when they speak. He then interjects, as Vance was saying, basically, let's give diplomacy a chance to see if this can work. He then begins to lecture J.D. Vance and Trump to their face. How they don't understand how many ceasefires Putin has broken. And how many times, that American diplomacy has failed to rein in Vladimir Putin. And he's like, hey, we relied on diplomacy under Biden. It didn't work. First Trump administration, it didn't work. Obama, it didn't work. It don't work. Don't talk to me about diplomacy. Now, it continues. Listen now to Zelensky saying you can't trust with Putin the agreement, the paper that it's written on. Roll cut 5B, Mike.
We had conversations with him, a lot of conversations, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire, all of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract, yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
No, you see, he's being really insulting. In other words, what are you Americans talking about? What he's really saying is, you guys, you don't know the history of what happened in the last 10 years. That's essentially what he's telling them. You don't understand Putin, I do. You don't understand Ukraine, I do. You don't understand ceasefires, whether they'll hold or not, I do. So now he's belittling JD. JD, what kind of diplomacy you talk about? What kind of ceasefire you talk about? So, he's now insulting the vice president and the president to their face. Now, let me just say this, okay? Even if you have disagreements or concerns, whether the ceasefire can hold, whether you need more security guarantees, whether the minerals deal is enough to bring peace to Ukraine, whether you can trust Putin's word, you don't litigate this in front of the cameras and in front of the world. Number one, you do it in private, like a grown-up. This kid's as my wife said, Grace, Zelensky is a punk. He dresses like a punk. He acts like a punk. He behaves like a punk. And he treated both Vance and Trump and the Oval Office and, frankly, the American people like a punk. And this is when now J.D. Vance rightly got offended and Trump started to get his back up. Roll cut 5C, Mike.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count one.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President.
So now, if you notice, Zelensky's starting to cut off JD. You'll see it soon with Trump. He starts talking over Trump. And he's like, come to Ukraine. In other words, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Why don't you come and see what's happening up close? And JD says, look, man, your army is breaking. You got to force people, basically kidnap them out of their apartments to send them into the front lines. And we're trying to save your country. And I don't want to go on one of your propaganda tours. Well, now things are getting hot. So he gets very touchy about the point about the forced conscriptions. And listen now, and he says that, you guys are going to feel war. Now, this is the Ukrainian argument, that if you don't stop Putin now in the Donbass, Putin's going after Poland, Putin's going after the Baltic states, you're going to have to invoke Article 5 in the NATO treaty, and now Americans are going to be dying. And that's when Trump jumped in. Roll cut 6, Mike.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly
Remember
what
this.
you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
Bingo. Now, and then all hell after that, just completely. It was just then, it just erupted. Okay, it was a blow up right after this point. Now, I want to ask you, who is to blame for the blow up at the White House? Zelensky or Trump and Vance? 631 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. Look, let me just say this because I want to go to the blazing phone lines. The lines are full. 617-266-6868 is the number. Zelensky does not want peace. What Trump clearly concluded from that Oval Office meeting, and that was driving the frustration with him and J.D. Vance. It's not just that Zelensky was insulting. Zelensky was rude. Zelensky was insolent. Zelensky was demeaning and degrading. Not just to Trump and J.D. Vance, but to the Oval Office itself and to the American people. He repeatedly belittled and downplayed all of the massive aid that the United States has given to Ukraine. I mean, the guy's a complete ingrate, a disgusting, corrupt con man and ingrate. But what Trump clearly realized, we want a minerals deal to ultimately set up a final peace deal. Zelensky wants the minerals deal to rope the United States into Ukraine to fight the war on Ukraine's behalf against Russia. That was the nub of the entire blow-up, dust-up that they had at the Oval Office. Zelensky doesn't want a ceasefire. Zelensky doesn't want peace. Zelensky wants to fight until he drives every single Russian off of what he sees as Ukrainian land. He knows Ukraine doesn't have the ability or the firepower to do it. He wants America to do it for him. And that, to me, was his most nefarious goal. And let me just say one other thing, because this needs to be said. Reports now have come out that on his way to Washington, Zelensky took phone calls. Now listen closely. From Victoria Nuland, from Alexander Vindman, from other warmongers who told him, Anthony Blinken, by the way, Blinken was another one. Susan Rice was the fourth person. So, from ex-Biden and Obama officials who told him, stand tough to Trump, be tough, stand up to him, bully him, don't let him push you around. In other words, they were telling Zelensky, you go after Trump and you go for his throat. And that's exactly what Zelensky did. They were egging him on to do his tough guy routine because, you see, the warmongers don't want an end to this war. The globalists don't want an end to this war. The European leftists don't want an end to this war. The media, the deep state, the military-industrial complex, they don't want an end to this war. And Zelensky is the puppet of the CIA. He is the puppet of the globalists. He is the puppet of the deep state. They put him in power. And they basically gave him these marching orders. You're not making peace. So, blow this thing sky high. And that's exactly what Zelensky did. And the most incredible thing of all, after he spits in our faces, after he diplomatically slaps Trump in the face, slaps J.D. Vance in the face, he then goes on Fox News with Bret Baier. And Bret Baier asks him point blank, do you realize you've just insulted not just Trump, not just the President of the United States, not just the office that he occupies in the Oval Office, but the American people. You consistently belittled and downplayed all of the aid that we've given you, all of the sacrifices that we've made that has kept you and your country alive. Will you now apologize? Listen to this ingrate. Here's Midget Man. Roll cut 10. Mike.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect the president and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things that where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians.
Then keep your mouth shut. I mean, some things we must discuss outside of media. And for democracy, we must talk behind closed doors. Then shut up. You're not even going to apologize? Let me tell you what they're saying in Ukraine. Okay? And then I'm going to go to the phone lines. You now have members of the Duma, the Ukrainian parliament, calling for Zelensky's resignation and his impeachment. Many in Ukraine are saying, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. He didn't just bite the hand that feeds us, he bit the whole hand off. Without the United States, without you, American weapons, American missiles, American tanks, American advisors, American money, American financial aid, Putin would have rolled through Kiev in 2 weeks. Let's be clear about this. You owe the existence of Ukraine and your government and your country to us. And you roll your eyes at the president? You thumb your nose at the president? You insult the president? You laugh off how much aid the American people have given you? As if you're entitled to it? As if somehow we owe it to you? You little corrupt piece of you-know-what. And one of the most beautiful things was to finally see this narcissist with the media fawning all over him and the left turning him into this international rock star finally be put in his place by Donald Trump. And it was now Zelensky's arrogance, his hubris, his pride, his sense of entitlement that now is going to destroy him. And God forbid, if he's not careful, it's going to destroy his country. Because from this point forward, as Trump said, Zelensky, by turning away from this peace deal, is now gambling with the lives of millions of his people. He is gambling with World War III, and he is gambling with the future of that entire region. This little punk has no idea now what the chain of events he has now set off. And for Lindsey Graham, his biggest backer in Congress, his most staunch supporter, to come out after that meeting and say that Zelensky is unstable and that he should resign immediately, for other pro-Ukraine hawks to come out one after another saying Zelensky needs to resign? Hey, buddy, you just jumped the shark. 617-266-6868. I think it was a masterclass by Trump. He stood up for America. He stood up for peace. He stood up for the world. And he showed for Zelensky for the warmongering, corrupt ingrate that he is. That's my opinion. What say you? Trump versus Zelensky. Who do you side with? Who is to blame for the blow-up? 617-266-6868. Phone lines are raging. Angelo in Rockland. You're going to kick us off, Angelo. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Thank you, Jeff. How are you? Yeah, that was really, really unbelievably disrespectful. And, you know, here's the reflection that I see. I see the deep state with Europe there, they're throttling speech and texting and everything like that. And they're in the same boat with Cheney and everything for change. Keep the war going. Keep it all going. The deep state has to play with Zelensky because they won't get the money we already sent them that's already in the Swiss banks waiting for him. He's got control of that till he gets what he wants. Then they'll get their payoff from what I see. But I think I trust Putin more than I trust the deep state and the oligarchs and Lewinsky and all these people. It's unbelievable how corrupt they are. And Democrats, when they want change, they won't put their lives on the line for it. They'll put our sons, daughters, and everybody else's lives on the line. Zelensky's people, anybody, to keep the money coming in. That's the bottom line here.
That's my fear. I mean, Angelo, You put your finger right on it. My fear is now that midget man, that idiot in Kiev, now backed by the British and the French. I don't know if you heard Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He now said yesterday in London at a major summit on Ukraine that Britain now is willing to put boots on the ground in Ukraine. And they're willing to put planes in the sky. So my fear is that these idiots may bungle all of us into World War III against Russia. Now, I want to ask all of you, okay, Kuhner country, after that blow up, there's just no other way, that very intense exchange, heated exchange, Trump afterwards kicked Zelensky out of the White House, told him, get out. Should Trump have done that? 649 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. Okay, some of you are texting the Kuhner man saying, come on, Jeff, he didn't throw him out. Yeah, I'm telling you, he threw him out. I mean, not Trump personally, but no, after that whole explosion that took place in front of the cameras, the media of the entire world, they were supposed to have a lunch, by the way, a very nice lunch, a very lavish lunch. And then they were going to do an historic signing of this rare earth minerals agreement and then hold a joint press conference. And after this huge blowout, then Zelensky was waiting to go have lunch, and Trump was furious, absolutely furious. And so Marco Rubio, from everything I've read in the media, Marco Rubio and other members of Trump's team walked up to Zelensky and said, I'm sorry, there's nothing left for us to discuss here. The lunch is off. Zelensky refuses to sign the deal, and the joint press conference is off. We've got other things to do, and leave. And so they kicked him out of the White House. Now, I'm telling you, that's never happened before. That the head of state, the head of government, the head of state is literally kicked out of the White House. That's what happened. That's what Zelensky, that's what he brought upon himself, and frankly, the shame to his country. And it's not like it was between him and Putin. I mean, you would understand that. They hate each other. Okay, I get it. And there's yelling and screaming and shouting, and, one or the other kicks the other one out. You got kicked out of the American White House. Your number one ally. Your number one military backer. The one indispensable country that has kept you afloat. And you so disrespected Trump and JD and the White House and the American people that they basically kicked you on your rear end. I mean, seriously, Now, Larry on Messenger makes a great point. If you want to see it again, it's funny and priceless at the same time, but it shows you what a disaster it was for Zelensky. Ukraine's ambassador to the United States is obviously there in the front row. And when she sees all of this unfolding, she has her head in her hands. And she's just shaking her head like in utter disbelief. She's like, what is this idiot doing? What is Zelensky doing? I don't know if this was done on purpose by Zelensky. I don't know. Apparently he's like this in private. He's cantankerous. He's argumentative. He's self-absorbed. He's narcissistic. The way many Americans describe him is he has a Napoleon complex. He's a very short man, which I don't care. My dad was a very short man as well. But the type of person who's short and feels very insecure about it. And so needs to constantly dominate or be domineering and pick needless fights to compensate, I guess, for his own sense of inadequacy. Whatever it is, he's a little Napoleon. Okay, he's got a Napoleon complex. And that's why Trump began to disparage him as tough guy. He goes, you're coming in here trying to bully me, trying to bully JD, trying to force us now into signing or giving you a security arrangement that we haven't even discussed. And you're talking all tough how you're going to take on the Russians. Without us, you guys are going to be destroyed. And easy with the tough guy act. You have no cards, as Trump said. You don't have a card to play. The only cards you have are the cards we give you. 617-266-6868 is the number. What Rubio said afterwards, and it sums up the entire American position. He played us. Zelensky played us. We thought we were here to sign a minerals rare earth agreement that would lead to a larger ceasefire and peace deal. Instead, Zelensky came here to try to get us in front of the cameras of the world to agree to a security guarantee. He was never interested in peace, never interested in a ceasefire, never interested in actually genuinely signing this agreement. He came and he wanted to get Trump on camera to say, okay, we'll backstop the Europeans and we'll underwrite Ukraine's security. And it blew up in his face. As Rubio said, he misled us. He lied to us, which is not the first time. And he wasted everybody's time. And now the peace deal, or whatever, the framework of a peace deal is now in tatters. How many more Ukrainians have to die? How many more Russians have to die? How many more innocent civilians have to die? From this point forward, it is now on Zelensky's hands. This war and all of the horrors are now the fault of one man, Zelensky. Let's be clear. Putin wants peace. Trump wants peace. The world wants peace. The man who turned his back and has walked away is Midget Man. Finch in Oregon. Thanks for holding, Finch, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. What's good?
Hi,
I just want to start out positive of something that you said with J.D. Vance. I think he showed in that moment that he was absolutely the right pick for Trump. He was like the tag team partner in wrestling, right? And it was a moment where Zelensky could have started World War III. And there could have been a nuclear war. In 12 minutes, we'd all be dead with that act. It was a BS act. It showed he is a little man, like you said. And I don't understand, really, why he did that, other than he was just waiting for that moment. And Trump and Vance said, no, we're not going to be disrespected.
Oh, I agree with you, Finch. I think you hit the nail right on the head. I really do. I think what J.D. Vance showed is he's a man of character. He's a patriot. He truly believes in putting America first. And it to me, vindicates that Trump picked him. Trump made a brilliant pick. J.D. and Trump said afterwards, he goes, it's great to have a vice president who has my back. He goes, J.D. had my back. J.D. had my back the whole time. And, remember under Mike Pence, when Trump would get into a fight, say, with Schumer and Pelosi, and there's Pence, Mama Luke, as the Italians say, doesn't say anything. The doofus, he just sits there and, doesn't say a word, keeps his mouth shut. I'm like, get in there, man. Your guy, your president, they're attacking him left, right, and center. Like, stand up for your guy, man. If this was Pence, he would have agreed with Zelensky. I'm telling you. He would have stabbed Trump right in the back. So you're completely right, Finch. I was proud of J.D. First of all, he was incredibly articulate. He was right, forceful, really, I thought, defended Trump's position. And ultimately, what I loved about it was J.D. was defending us. He was like, where's the gratitude, man? Where's your gratitude? Where's the thanks? $200 billion of U.S. hard-earned taxpayer money. And you come in here and act like we haven't given you anything? Like we owe you? Like we've done nothing for you? He goes, how dare you? How dare you? And remember that part where he says, and you even campaigned for the Democrats in September in Pennsylvania. You even campaigned against Trump and on behalf of his opponent. And basically saying, and Trump's a big enough man to forget that and to look the other way for the sake of peace. So he was like, I'm sorry, man. You're disrespecting the president. You're disrespecting the Oval Office. You're disrespecting the American people. You owe us an apology. And try a little bit of some gratitude. And I mean, I got to say, both he and Trump really put Zelensky in his place. He left the White House with his tail between his legs. Good. Good. Finch, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, speaking of apologies, it is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Now, the question is not, should Zelensky apologize? I think it's, it should be 100-0. I mean, of course he should apologize. I've never seen somebody disrespect the president or our country the way Zelensky did. The question is, will Zelensky apologize? Not should. Will this little ingrate, midget man, will this corrupt shyster apologize for insulting Trump and the American people? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUH, and as in National ER. You can also vote via X. I was very active on X last night. My handle there, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, KUH, and as in National ER. If I'm voting on this poll, personally, I'm a B. I don't think he's going to apologize. I think his ego has grown too big. I think he's way too proud. He's way too arrogant. He's way too full of himself. And he's still running around. He told Keir Starmer yesterday, I was right. So why Trump upset? Why JD mad? What? Everybody say I should resign. Why? I do nothing wrong. So he's such a narcissist. He's such almost a sociopath, frankly, that he thinks like, what? So, you guys owe me. If anyone's the victim, it's me. So I don't think Trump's ever going to see an apology from this pathetic buffoon, this clown masquerading as a president with his sweatshirt. 617-266-6868. Barbara in Maryland. Thanks for holding, Barbara, and welcome.
Good morning to you.
Hi,
Everything
Barbara.
said so far, I agree with it 100%. I think the Europeans emboldened him because he went to see them first. He's been meeting with some Democrats, too. But I didn't know until JD said it about him campaigning against President Trump. I didn't know that, or at least I hadn't heard about it. But anyway, that was a surprise to me. And President Trump was still willing to help him. Well, I think at this point, Zelensky needs to sign the deal that Trump writes out, President Trump writes out, the way he wants it, and send it FedEx. He shouldn't set foot in this country again, ever. He is an unwelcomed person for disrespecting the country and our president and vice president. And he addresses the vice president, JD. Who does he think he is? He is arrogant. Everything you said about him, a sociopath. You're so right about that. And now would also be a good time if President Trump announces the UN is moving out of the United States. Put it over in Europe somewhere.
Oh, I agree. Barbara, you and I are simpatico on so many issues. No, look, I mean, I knew that Zelensky had campaigned. We briefly discussed it on the show during the election season. He went to Pennsylvania and he visited a munitions factory there. Clearly backing the Democrats. He was surrounded by Democrats, backing Kamala Harris, and basically trying to make the case that all these weapons that we were sending to Ukraine, well, we're making a lot of them here. So not all the money is going to Ukraine. Some of it is staying here for the military-industrial complex. So that was Zelensky's argument. But no, he wanted Joe Biden to win first, and then he wanted Kamala to win. And he did everything in his power to help them win, or try to help them win. And now, I mean, he hitched his wagon to the Democrats and to Biden and Kamala. And now he's got to deal with Trump. And instead of realizing, oops, maybe I should change my tact and be grateful because Trump doesn't seem to be holding the fact that I tried to defeat him and interfere in an American election against me, instead he basically doubled and tripled down. Now, look, Barbara, this is my reading of the tea leaves. You may disagree with me. I think it's pretty obvious now. The globalists are petrified of Trump. The globalists want a larger war against Russia. Their ultimate goal has always been to provoke a U.S.-Russia war. And so what you're seeing now is the Europeans are rallying around Zelensky. The Europeans are circling the wagons. They want this war in Ukraine to continue. Starmer has now pledged billions of dollars for more weapons. Macron has come out saying he wants billions more for weapons. They're even talking about sending European boots on the ground, planes into Ukraine. So they're almost telling Zelensky, you don't need Trump, you don't need America. If you want to continue this war, we are going to give you the economic, military means to do it. Trump is now basically telling Zelensky, either you do a peace deal or I'm walking away. No more military aid for you from the United States. I'm going to cut off all flow of weapons. In fact, I don't know if you saw this big story, Barbara, to show you how stupid Zelensky is. Marco Rubio ordered USAID to stop putting up the hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that is keeping Ukraine's power grid up and running. Without us, they can't even turn the lights on in Kiev. They can't even have electricity in most major cities in Ukraine without our full support. So basically, Trump is telling them, look, you don't have any power, you won't have any electricity, you won't have any weapons, at least our weapons, which are the best weapons. You want to go it alone, or you want to go with the Europeans against Putin? Have at it. You want to sacrifice more Ukrainian boys? You want to keep this meat grinder, this trench warfare going? Have at it. But then don't come running to me if Putin takes even more territory and the Russians are on the outskirts of Kiev. And now you got to sue for peace because your country's essentially been smashed and your military's been decimated. So what Trump was telling Zelensky, you idiot, basically, this is what he was saying. Basically, you idiot. I'm going to save you. With our money and European peacekeepers, we're going to claw back some of the territory, and I'm going to give Ukraine peace with honor. Dummy. Without us, Putin's going to roll you. And so my question to you, is it time for Trump to wash his hands of the whole thing? To say, I tried for peace. I did everything I could for peace. You saw Zelensky and his behavior in the Oval Office. This is not a rational man. This is not a stable man. This is not a serious man. This is not someone who wants peace. And so, you know what? To Ukraine, you're on your own. And if you think the Europeans have your back, God bless you. And I wish you nothing but the best. Should Trump just say, I'm done, America is walking away? What say you, Barbara?
I think we should just do that now, but not say it. Let him know. Because if we said that, if President Trump made that announcement that he's washing his hands of Ukraine, they're done. Russia will just roll right over. Period. I wouldn't want to see that happen. I think right now we're still playing chess. I think President Trump is still playing chess. He wants those rare earth minerals, and by kicking him out of the White House, he was so disgraceful, sitting there with his little arms folded, looking so defiant, like a pouting kid. And the way he was thrown out of there, I think that's good enough for now. I think President Trump is still in the game. This is chess, and we're going to get everything that we want from him. Then, if he doesn't, if there's any descending from anything that President Trump wants, that's done. And if they turned off the money to the grid, that's hitting home. But you said earlier that his cabinet wants him to resign.
You know, Zelensky's got big problems at home now. This was a PR disaster for him. Some members of parliament, now, I don't know if they have the votes. It's called the Duma, right, in Ukraine. They call it the Duma. That's their parliament. They're trying to initiate impeachment proceedings. I'm not saying they have the votes, but what I'm saying is he's got problems. The Ukrainians saw what happened on television. They weren't impressed. They're not stupid. They're like, without America, we're finished. And now you're fighting with the Americans? Are you crazy? So, and Zelensky then ran to Britain, and he's running to France, and he's running to the EU like a beggar, cup in hand. And he thinks, well, if I lose the money from the Americans, will the Europeans make it up? He basically now wants to run the same con with the Europeans that he's been running with us. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. But Barbara, look, I like your idea. Don't say it publicly. Do it privately. Start squeezing Zelensky. Cut off the money. Cut off the military aid. Put maximum pressure. And maybe he'll come back to the negotiating table and sign the deal. We shall see. Barbara, as always, thank you very much for that call. On the great WRKO, Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, many of you are emailing the Kuhner man, asking me, Jeff, is Zelensky even a legitimate leader at this point? Well, no. I mean, if you're going to be honest about it, no. I mean, I know they got to deal with him because he's the guy at the head of the government. But this is a man who canceled elections last year in Ukraine and has declared martial law. He's a tin pot dictator. He has banned all opposition parties. These are facts. He has banned all opposition media. He has jailed political opponents. He has shut down Russian Eastern Orthodox Christian monasteries and churches. In fact, he's even jailed priests and monks. So this man is a tin pot dictator who should have held elections last year and now is ruling by diktat and by presidential decree and through martial law. So, no, he's not the legitimate leader of Ukraine. And look, I'm rarely with Lindsey Graham on anything. It's time for Zelensky to resign. Lindsey Graham is completely right. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has come out and said he needs to resign. Zelensky clearly cannot or doesn't want to deliver peace. And he has lied to us. He's lied to Trump. And he ultimately wants to continue this war for as long as it takes. Because here's his problem, okay? If the war ends, the gravy train is over. He and his cronies can no longer pilfer and steal and embezzle billions and billions of dollars. And when the war ends, his own people are going to find out how much money he stole. And then they're going to want justice. He's going to have to flee, seek extradition, whatever, to France, Paris, wherever. He's not going to be allowed to stay in Ukraine once the full truth about what he has done comes to light. So that's why he doesn't want peace. He wants this war to go on and on and on. And I want you to listen now to Trump, because this was one of the most explosive moments in that whole blow-up, where he said, you understand what you're playing with. By trying to continue this war and destroy our attempts at peace and any kind of a ceasefire, it's going to be millions of Ukrainians dead and Russians. And what if this thing escalates to World War III? You're bringing the British behind you. You're bringing the French behind you. You're bringing the Europeans behind you to keep this war going. France has nuclear weapons. Britain has nuclear weapons. What happens if Russian soldiers start killing French soldiers and British soldiers? In other words, Trump is saying, look, man, this for me is about ending the war, stopping the killing, and in many ways, stopping the possibility, preventing the possibility of a third world war, a nuclear war. Listen now to Trump. Roll cut 6, Mike.
Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military? And do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction?
Sorry, Mike, that was my bad. That was my bad. We already played that cut. Please play cut 6A. This is after the Zelensky, JD told Zelensky you should say thank you and be more grateful. Listen, 6A. This is now Trump directly to Zelensky. Roll cut 6A, Mike.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Notice how Zelensky keeps talking over Trump? Here, I want to just play it again, okay? So the president is now, picking up from J.D. Vance, where J.D. said, hey, look, man, you should be grateful. You should be thankful for everything we've done for you. And then Trump is like, don't tell us how to feel to Zelensky, how we should feel frightened by Putin and how we should feel that somehow we're going to be at war with Putin if we don't stop him in Ukraine. Like, don't tell us what the United States should do. Don't dictate to us what our policy should be. We're here to help you. Now, I want to play the cut again. Listen to how Zelensky keeps cutting Trump off, not letting him finish. Roll cut 6A again, Mike, please.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Trump was brilliant. Please don't get me wrong, but honest to God, Trump should have literally gotten up, and said, "Excuse me, listen, you little midget. Okay, you ingrate. You are talking to the President of the United States in my Oval Office, in my White House, in my country. in front of all the television cameras, and you're going to talk over me? You're going to try to bully me? You're not going to let me finish my sentence? Get out. On the spot, I said, get the F out. Get out, and don't you ever come back again. Now, on the merits, I thought Trump was restrained. That's why Trump was like, I can't believe this guy. I can't believe this guy. Zelensky is gambling with millions of lives. He's gambling with the future of Europe. He's gambling with World War III. The man is a punk. 7:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very quickly, because this was really, I almost thought he was going to kick him out at this point. Trump now says you're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. In other words, he's saying, look, you're being reckless. You're being irresponsible, i.e., you're a punk. Like, what is wrong with you? And then listen to this, where Trump says, you're not just disrespecting me and J.D. Vance. You're disrespecting the United States of America. Roll cut 6B, Mike.
And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble.
Wait a minute.
No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this.
It's just, this guy, and he keeps talking over Trump. I just find this incredible. And it's like, they're trying to tell him, like, look, dude, I don't know if you're stoned. Really, I don't know if you're high on cocaine. I don't know what your problem is. Now, what everyone has to understand, because the audio obviously is compelling, but the video, Zelensky's constantly rolling his eyes at J.D. Vance and Trump. It's not just the words that are belittling. It was his behavior. It was his facial expressions. It was his body language. And look, what it showed, very clear. This is what came out. And Trump said so on his Truth Social. He goes, it was a very emotional meeting. But he says emotion, many ways, clarifies things. Because it makes you really see how that person views us and views the situation. Zelensky has no respect for Trump. He hates Trump. Zelensky has no respect for J.D. Vance. He hates J.D. Vance. And ultimately, like many on the European left, Zelensky has no respect for the United States. He hates the United States. And that's what was on clear display. He doesn't respect us. He's not grateful. He thinks we owe him all that money. The Ukrainians almost act like fighting Putin is like doing us a favor. Like we should be thanking them for fighting Vladimir Putin. And so this is what came across clear, his utter contempt for Trump and for America and for the American people. Now, Zelensky's made comments in the past, just in the last couple of years. Whenever he doesn't get as much money as he wants, he'll say, oh, the American people are selfish. They only think about themselves. They think about inflation and illegal immigration. I'm serious. Word for word. That's what he's been saying. Inflation and illegal immigration and the price of food and gas. But we in Ukraine, we are dying. In other words, you shouldn't be giving us $250 billion. You should be giving us $500 billion, $1 trillion, $2 trillion, $3 trillion. It's never enough with this guy. And ultimately, what is he covering up? I'll tell you what he's covering up. He's covering up the fact that Ukraine has been running bioweapons labs all across that country. He's covering up the fact that the CIA overthrew the democratically elected Ukrainian government, leading to the Maidan Revolution of 2014. He's covering up the fact that much of the aid and the weapons that we've given to Zelensky's regime has been sold on the international black market for 20 cents on the dollar. For 20 cents on the dollar. And they end up in the Congo. They end up in the hands of Hamas. They've ended up in the hands of the Islamist pro-Al-Qaeda rebels that now run Syria. And they've ended up in the hands of the Mexican drug cartels. Now, if there's a peace deal, a permanent end to the fighting, all of this is going to come out. So it's like riding a tiger now for Zelensky. He doesn't want peace because peace will ultimately destroy him. It will unmask and expose him and his numerous crimes and that of his cronies. Now, listen to President Trump saying the only card you have is America. The only card. We bailed you out when the invasion happened. I bailed you out in my first term by giving you all these Javelin missiles that destroyed all those Russian tanks during the early days of the invasion in February 2022. We are the ones keeping your military and your country afloat. And you're coming here and dictating and lecturing us? Roll cut 7, Mike.
You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
you haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
you
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and your men are brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if you didn't have our military equipment,
if
you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Okay. Now, did you catch that last part? Mike, do me a favor. Play that last part again. He's sarcastic. So Zelensky now is belittling Trump. He's being sarcastic. And if you can't see the video, but he's like waving his hand up and down, his right hand, like dismissing Trump, like, yeah, Putin said 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. In other words, like, oh, you Americans think you bailed us out. Yeah, like Putin. Putin said he'd take us in 3 days. Trump's like, no, more like 2 weeks. But the point is, Zelensky's like, we fought alone. You fought alone? Really? You fought alone? You've forgotten all the money we've given you already? Without us, Putin would roll you in 2 weeks. Yeah, 3 days. 3 days. Like he's mocking Trump. Like, yeah, you're just echoing Putin's talking points. Okay. How long do you think Ukraine would have lasted had we not pumped hundreds of billions of dollars into that country? Their air defense systems, their missiles, their drones, their tanks, all of the ammunition, all of the artillery. Never mind keeping the lights on. Never mind paying everybody's salary. Never mind everything we've given to them. Literally everything. And this guy now is mocking, 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. Mike, play that last part again, please.
Military equipment. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days. I heard it from Putin. In 3 days. This is something
maybe
new.
Less.
In 2 weeks. Of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this.
Now, when Trump is saying, I felt, honestly, at that point, I felt very sorry for him. Because you're dealing with someone who's clearly unstable. Unstable and an absolute disgusting ingrate. Like really, just a disgusting ingrate. And almost, I'm serious, like almost a sociopath. Do you know how many lives we've saved? Just from our own aid? If it wasn't for us, look, let's talk cold turkey. Kiev would have fallen. Kharkiv would have fallen. Odessa would have fallen. Most of Ukraine would have fallen. And this guy's like, 3 days, 3 days, 3 days. It was insulting. It was insolent. It was ungrateful. It was arrogant. It was condescending. It was rude. Frankly, it was obscene. Now, when Trump says it's hard to do business like this, what he really is saying, I'm telling you, is like, F off. Like, buddy, F off. Can you just imagine, like, if this was private, not in front of the cameras? So, 3 days, 3 days. I'm telling you, the president would have said, buddy, hey, Zelensky, Volodymyr, F off, man. Like, this is the thanks that we get? 603. You can text us 70470. This is from 603, and I think he hit the nail, or whatever, 603 hit the nail right on the head. Jeff, beggars can't be choosers. And Zelensky obviously doesn't realize he's now a beggar. Instead of going to the White House with hat in hand, you can see he's gotten too used to the entitlement of the last administration, of the entire Democrat Party, and all the European globalists have given him over the last 4 years. He conducts himself with the same ungrateful contempt of the illegal aliens that have come here with the right hand extended to take and with the left hand flipping us the finger. And Trump and Vance won't put up with it. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And I would just add this. The left and the globalists have now created a Frankenstein's monster. That's what Zelensky has now become. They've turned him into a left-wing rock star. The media has been fawning all over him. Democrats, European leftists go on about his greatness and he's Churchill and the Churchill of our times. And it's gone right to his head. And now he's 749 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Trump is now smoking them all out. On CNN, listen now to this. Remember Alexander Vindman, that traitor? The one behind the phone call, the first perfectly good phone call to Zelensky from Trump that got Trump impeached? Well, he's now coming out and calling for the resignation of J.D. Vance for daring to debate and refute Zelensky. And he wants Trump to immediately apologize to Zelensky, saying, quote unquote, I demand it. Adam Kinzinger, remember him, the crier, that never Trump, anti-Trump Republican who was part of the January 6th Unselect Committee? Well, he's now come out and said, not only should Trump apologize to Zelensky, but that Americans should apologize to Ukrainians for not doing enough, for not giving enough, that Americans should be apologizing to Ukraine. Now, what is interesting is, final point, because I want to go to the phone lines, is that just hours before his meeting with Trump in the Oval Office, Midget Man met with several key partisan Democrats. One of them was maybe now the leading, and he's the craziest of all of them, even more than Adam Piece of Schiff. The leading anti-Trumper is Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy. I mean, he's insane. I'm telling you, he's legit insane. Chris Murphy apparently told Zelensky, blow up the deal. Go after Trump, debate Trump, argue with Trump, contradict Trump. That Murphy now is saying, We have to defend the entire sovereignty, all of the borders of Ukraine, even if it means a war with Russia. And so his instructions to Zelensky was, you need to blow up this deal. And by blowing up this deal, this will lead to more war with Russia. This will prevent Trump from getting a Nobel Peace Prize, which is the last thing the Democrats want. And that we will then call Trump Putin's puppet. So what you're seeing now is in many ways Zelensky is a Democrat operative. He campaigned for Joe Biden. He campaigned for Kamala Harris. He's doing everything possible to sabotage Trump. And now it's obvious by his performance in the White House. He's not interested about ending the war or taking care of his own people or stopping the bloodshed. He is now serving his globalist masters. And the Democrats are using Zelensky to try to go after and undermine Trump and his entire administration. Vindman is a traitor. Let's be crystal clear. The man is a traitor. And if he did speak, and I believe he did, obviously, with Zelensky, with the intent of negotiating on behalf of the American government or interfering in these peace talks with Zelensky, that is a violation of the Logan Act, my friend. Where's Pam Bondi? Seriously, where's Pam Bondi? Chris Murphy now needs to be made a public example of. This man would rather millions more die than for this war to end. The Democrats are now showing their true colors. They hate America, they hate peace, and they want a world war with Russia. They're lunatics. 617-266-6868. So let me ask all of you, should Trump apologize to Zelensky? Should America or Americans apologize to Ukraine? The Democrats say yes. I say they're traitors. What say you? Rob in Dedham. Thanks for holding, Rob, and welcome.
Jeff. The Nazi actor has no clothes on.
That's funny.
It is funny. Hey, Jeff, let's get one thing straight. The question comes up all the time, right? Who started the war? The answer is Joe Biden started the war. When he took the sanctions off, when he took the sanctions off Nord Stream 2 pipeline, that gave Putin the green light to go ahead, okay? And we got to have that little, get the timeline going. He went to Kiev and tried to embarrass Besset. He said no there. They saw him in Munich. They said no there. And he came to Washington on his own. That's why he slept in the Holiday Inn, and he wasn't in Blair House. My question, Jeff, is who was the reporter that asked him the question, the signal to go after Vance? Who was it? Who was the reporter? Because that was directed to Vance.
No, you're right. That question was directed to Vance. It had nothing to do with Zelensky. It was a Polish reporter. And, and the Poles were like, well, we want you to be more aggressive and more condemnatory of Putin. We want you to say you're against Putin, that you're on the side of Ukraine. And we want you to really call out Putin as the aggressor, as a war criminal, as a dictator, and JD was like, look, we tried this under Biden. How many names did Biden keep calling Biden? How many names did Biden keep calling Putin? He called him every name in the book. He said he should be locked up. He should be tried at the ICC. He called him a war criminal. He called him a Nazi. He called him a fascist aggressor. He called him a tyrant. He went on and on and on. He called him a monster. He called him Hitler. He goes, and what did that get us? You cut off all lines of communication. Diplomacy was killed. No chance for peace because you just so vilified and demonized the guy. And 3 years of war. It's a stalemate. It's a protracted stalemate. It's like World War I now. It's just they're fighting for a couple of yards. It's trench warfare. And it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 dead every week. And Trump, I believe, Rob, that Trump is genuinely moved at the pictures of all of these dead Ukrainians and Russians. Young men, young boys, civilians, men, women, children. And he's like, this is grotesque. What's the point of it? It's so senseless. And this thing could what? Escalate to World War III? What that? Over what? And so he desperately wants to try to make peace as a humanitarian, as a civilized, decent man. And the media wants to keep this war going because they're the shills for the deep state, the military-industrial complex. The Democrats want to keep this war going because they're a shill for the globalists. And let's be clear, Rob, they don't want us to have those mineral rights, those rare earth resources. That's for George Soros. That's for George Soros. Soros and the globalists want Ukraine's rare earth minerals, just like they want Russia's rare earth minerals. That's what this is all about, Rob. So, you know, Trump addressed the media. He had a separate press conference after the whole blow-up. Zelensky's been kicked out of the White House. It's the biggest story in the world. And for the first time, I genuinely felt sorry for him. He looked exhausted. He looked deflated. His shoulders were kind of drooping a little bit. And you can tell, it's like, it's, you know, you can almost read Trump's mind. He goes, I could walk away. I don't need this. We don't need Ukraine. I can wash my hands of the whole thing. Just cut off all the money, all the military assistance, the financial assistance, and I can just let them fight it out. But then I keep seeing the images of those dead boys and those dead soldiers and those dead civilians. And I'm asking myself, how much more can these people take? And what if World War III happens under my watch? Because the idiot Europeans, and in particular it's Macron and Starmer, think that they can send troops and send airplanes and send missiles into Ukraine, potentially fighting a war with Russia. And so what? We're going to see a mushroom cloud over Europe because these idiots want to distract their own people from the fact that, look, Starmer's popularity is near zero. Macron's popularity is near zero. Macron has destroyed France. He has allowed the Muslims to pour into France. The borders are wide open under Macron. The economy is stagnant. It's finished in France. You've got Britain now. Starmer is the Joe Biden of Britain. He's allowed the Muslims to take over. He's driving business and jobs out of the United Kingdom. UK now is on the verge of a major recession. They've got a huge inflation crisis. They want a war with Russia to distract from their domestic problems that they can't solve and that they're responsible for. So Trump is looking at this and he's like, half of me just wants to walk away, and the other half of me says, I can't walk away because these idiots are going to bungle us into World War III. And honestly, I feel so sorry for the guy because it's a mess. It's a mess. Final word to you, Rob.
Oh, Jeff, as you listen, and by the way, I think it wasn't Colonel Vindman. I think it was his twin brother that was on TV.
Well, it's the guy with the medals. So I think it's Alexander Vindman. It's the guy with the medals. But I mean, I could be wrong. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Either of them, they're traitors. I don't care. Your loyalty is to Ukraine. It's not to the United States. It's obvious. And that's the other thing. Chris Murphy's loyalty. I've never seen Chris Murphy ever get so worked up over American borders or America's sovereignty the way this guy gets worked up over Ukraine's borders and Ukraine's sovereignty. I've never seen anything like this. So notice the Democrats and the media are Ukraine first. America last, Ukraine first. And what they're really telling us now is forget that they don't want peace. They want a world war with Russia. That's what they're telling us. They want to fight Moscow. They want to take the fight to the Russians. They want an all-out land war between the West, NATO, and Russia. I'm telling you, these people are lunatics. 617-266-6868 is the number. Jim in Florida. Thanks for holding, Jim, and welcome.
Hey, thanks for getting me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jim.
Something really smelled about that whole thing. The Democrats met with him, Zelensky, right before, right? Like literally that day or the day before?
2 hours before. 2 hours before.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this thing, I'll tell you what, I think it was all, he went in there just to try to trigger, it was trigger Trump, and this thing was all set up. I'm hoping, I would think that Trump, since that, I was a little, I probably disagree with a lot of you guys here. I thought Rubio played it well, and I don't know. I don't know that it was really smart for Vance to speak up, because Trump was handling the situation very well. The first, and he really, if you watch the whole thing, which most people don't, he really exposed him because he made him look very petulant, because the first 40 minutes of it, he was he was cordial and gave him, Zelensky, even some credit. I thought, I get the sentiment that, hey, it's cool that Vance is supporting his guy, but I just didn't think, you notice Rubio sat there and stayed very quiet, which I don't know. I thought was a smart play, because it triggered, when Vance did that, Zelensky, then he, of course, reacted, and then Trump reacted. Now, I'm hoping Trump kind of knows everything that's going on, and he's playing a bigger game here, because they may have anticipated that this was a setup. And so I think we're going to have to see. And I'm hoping that's the deal, because as people go, I've noticed that a lot of people didn't look at the first 40 minutes. But as you see that people do, over the last 2 days or so, Zelensky's getting more and more exposed as being very petulant. So I think we're going to have to wait and see. Well,
Jim, look, I mean, if you look at the whole, you're right. I urge everybody, it's about a 15-minute presser. Okay, it's a 15-minute event. For the first 80% of it, 35 minutes, whatever it is, Trump is very conciliatory. Very conciliatory. And you can see that Zelensky's needlessly attacking Trump, contradicting Trump. Like, I'll just give you a quick example. Trump says, man, the Russians have leveled city after city. And he says some of them are demolition sites. Zelensky says, that's not true. Trump's looking at him like, buddy, I'm making your case. Like, what's your problem? No, it's not true. No, it's not true. People still go to school. Children learn underground. Children learn at home. They do online learning. Come and see our cities. So Ukraine is not pummeling and destroying your cities? Like the images, that's all the pictures, the photos, so it's all a lie? No? So if things aren't so bad, why are you here with hat in hand asking us for money? So you could tell, even his own people were shaking their heads like, look, what's the problem? The guy's saying the Russians have been attacking us. The Russians have been destroying cities and killing our civilians. What are you arguing with him for? So he was combative. He kept contradicting Trump. He kept attacking Trump. He was nitpicking with Trump. Even when Trump was clearly backing Zelensky and Ukraine's side. Where I disagree with you, Jim, 1,000%, is to say that J.D. Vance bears any blame for this, and I'll tell you why. Go back and I played the cut in the 6 o'clock hour, but I urge you to go back. J.D. is asked a question by a reporter from Poland, and the question is, why aren't you guys denouncing Putin more? Why aren't you saying you're against Putin and you're on the side of Ukraine? Why don't you just come out and say that? And then JD doesn't say a word about Zelensky. Zelensky has nothing to do with this. JD is talking about Joe Biden. And he says, I don't want to do what the previous administration did, where we just thump our chest and call people names. What did that get us? It got us war, 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 death, death, death. JD says, let's try diplomacy. Diplomacy may get us out of this and finally bring peace. That's all JD said. It's Zelensky who then says directly to Vance, not Vice President Vance, but with his arms folded and a condescending look on his face, JD, you talk about diplomacy. What diplomacy? And then he starts going on about how Obama failed Ukraine, how Trump failed Ukraine, how Biden failed Ukraine, how diplomacy has failed over and over. And you talk about ceasefire, JD. But Putin, no respect, no ceasefire. So now he's lecturing JD, almost berating JD, being patronizing and condescending to JD. And that's when JD Vance said, hey, buddy, we're trying to save your country here, man. Show a little gratitude. Be a little thankful. And Trump is nodding his head like, yeah. And that's when Trump dropped in and said, Trump interjected and right away looked at Zelensky and said, you're disrespecting our country. You have no cards. Stop it with the tough guy routine. So, to be honest, I know the media is trying to make JD into the scapegoat, and I know the Democrats are trying to make JD into the scapegoat. JD did nothing wrong, except stand up for America first, stand up for our country, and stand up for Trump. Final word to you, Jim.
Yeah, I see. Let me ask you this real quick: if they hadn't had a dust up, if the dust up hadn't happened, what do you think would have been the end result of that particular, this meeting on Friday?
They would have had a dust up behind closed doors, and someone like a Vindman would have leaked to the media lies about JD and Trump to trigger some kind of a special counsel investigation. That's why Trump did it in front of the cameras. It was a brilliant move on his part. This time, there can be no Vindman. There can be no, I heard this from another source who said this, that Trump said this, or J.D. Vance said this, and then the media goes crazy, the Democrats go crazy, and suddenly you have to call a special counsel. So what Trump said was, no, we're going to do this in front of the cameras. So you're going to see what I say, what J.D. Vance says, who, by the way, is the point person on Ukraine. That's why J.D. is so important. He's essentially the guy leading the American delegation, more than Rubio. And what Zelensky is, what Zelensky's saying, what his attitude is, and what the world now sees unequivocally, again, because of Trump's genius on this, it's Zelensky that doesn't want peace. It's Zelensky that doesn't want a ceasefire. That, in fact, for him, this minerals deal was nothing more than a cynical, opportunistic attempt to rope the United States into a war against Russia. And that's what Trump realized. In fact, I'll play you the cut right after the break, where Trump said, we were being played by Zelensky. 820 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is an absolutely brilliant text from 617. And I think really sums up what Zelensky's intended purpose was at the meeting. He met with Democrats. He spoke with Victoria Nuland, apparently, Susan Rice, Antony Blinken. He spoke with Vindman before the meeting as well. So the Biden people, the Obama people, the deep staters, those that have gotten the CIA and the globalists involved in Ukraine, those people all basically coached Zelensky and guided him on what to do at the meeting. And I just want to read this text because I think it nails it. Jeff, it seems clear that Zelensky had a mission to achieve. 1, ruin any chance of Trump getting a Nobel Peace Prize for ending the war with Russia and Ukraine. 2, deep state globalists from Europe, particularly Britain and France, with help from U.S. swamp creatures like Obama and Schumer and Chris Murphy, want Soros to get the mineral rights in Ukraine and Russia. 3, Zelensky is doing his part to help the war machine effort and the money laundering going on until the Democrats can win back the House and the Senate in 2026 with talks of stopping communist Russia and Putin's puppet Trump. The media and the Democrats have a plan and a playbook. And Jeff, they don't care about the cost in human lives or in money. They just want to reclaim power in D.C. and print more money and keep stealing it. Bingo. Keep the war going. Keep the money laundering operation going. And use this to go after Trump. Make Putin the big boogeyman so the Democrats can win back the House or the Senate in the midterms. That was Zelensky's purpose. That was his mission. Now, very quickly, listen now to Trump. This is after the explosive Oval Office meeting. Zelensky is now gone. He's been kicked out of the White House. Trump holds a quick press conference on Marine One. He had to go back to Florida for an event, so he's on the White House lawn. Listen now, this is very important. Trump says it dawned on him during the meeting that Zelensky never wanted peace. He never wanted a ceasefire. He wanted to tether us, to drag us, to fight his war against Russia. Roll cut 1, Mike.
We had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week.
And then Trump continues. And this is the part. By the way, he looked tired. He looked deflated. He looked frustrated, which I don't blame him, obviously. I don't want to say defeated because Trump is never defeated, but you can see the exasperation. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. The pure exasperation on his face. And he's, why do I care about all these Ukrainian and Russian soldiers dying? Why? Here's why. Roll cut 1A, Mike.
somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and then he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that. Not for this country.
Very quick. What can Zelensky do to come back to the White House? Roll cut 2, Mike.
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay?
So that's, I mean, in a nutshell, that's why the whole thing blew up. What Trump realized was, this guy's playing us. He's playing us. He wants to tether us to Ukraine and have us fight a war against Russia, which is what the deep state and the globalists have wanted all along. 8:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. 617-266-6868 is the number. Mark in Medford. Thanks for holding, Mark. And as always, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. I thought you guys forgot about me.
We would never, ever forget about you, Mark.
So, you know what, Jeff? The bottom line here is this, okay? Zelensky thought he was going to come here and speak to Trump like he spoke to Joe Biden in that phony administration. And then you saw the look on his face when it hit him, like a friggin' thunderbolt, okay? Crap. I'm not talking to an old senile buffoon. I'm talking to a president that has all his faculties, that ain't going to take any crap from anybody.
Oh, I agree. No, Mark, I agree with you 1,000%. I think he forgot who he's dealing with. And I think you're right. He was so used to abusing Biden, and because he was blackmailing Biden and extorting Biden. So he was so used to kicking Biden around that he thought he could just come in there in front of the cameras, in front of the entire world, and just start bullying Trump and cutting him off and talking over him and disrespecting him and lecturing him and browbeating him and obviously and JD Vance, and that what? They were just going to sit there and take it because you're Volodymyr Zelensky? I mean, that's how big his ego has gotten? Well, I'll tell you that, Mark, I'll tell you this, buddy. Trump burst his ego and big. Diplomatically, he kicked Zelensky right in the teeth. I mean, if you're a Ukrainian, you have to be holding your head in shame over the way Zelensky conducted himself. Especially your number one backer, literally your number one ally that has saved you again and again and again. And this is how you talk to the president? This is how you treat the president? And, you know, there's even one point where he's like dismissing all of the American aid, like sort of like, you know, like we fought this war alone. And Trump's like, what alone? We pumped $200 billion into you guys. We gave you your military. We train your military. Our advisors are there. We're basically running this war for you. Without us, Putin would be partying in Kiev. And now you slap us in the face like this? Mark, I've got to ask you, in all seriousness, are we dealing with a man whose ego has just gotten so out of control? Are we dealing with somebody, seriously, who's not right in the head? Are we dealing with a coke addict? because that's the rumor in Ukraine, that he's powdering his nose all the time. But there's something wrong with this guy. And it's not just what he said. Rolling his eyes, folding his arms, making facial gestures like, oh, like, God, Trump's an idiot, you know? Or J.D. Vance, oh, I got to deal with these stupid Americans. The room was stunned. If you want, I'll cite you the New York Times. I'll cite you the Washington Post, saying that Zelensky's handlers, Zelensky's staff, could not believe how Zelensky behaved in the Oval Office. That they, the Ukrainians, are shocked. Mark, what do you think accounts for this epic diplomatic meltdown? As Scott Besson put it, the Treasury Secretary, you know, your own goal like in hockey or in soccer, this is the greatest diplomatic own goal ever. What do you think what do you think drove it, Mark?
Basically, Jeff, we're dealing with a man that's being told, that was told what to say to Trump, how to act towards Trump by the Democrats, by the deep state, and by whoever else is financially benefiting from this war. And it's funny, Jeff, you mentioned Joe Biden and how he was blackmailing Joe Biden. That was going to be my next point, so you segued me perfectly, okay? It got to the point, Jeff, where I got up at the edge of my couch, and it got to the point where I thought Trump was finally going to ask the question that everybody in this country and around the world wants the answer to, and that is, what do you have on Joe Biden that he gave you everything he told you, not that you asked, but you told him to give it to you, and he gave it to you. What did you have on that man? I was rooting for it at that point, Jeff. I was hoping he said it.
I think if it was behind closed doors, Trump would have asked him that. I think he didn't want to do it in front of the cameras because you don't know what's going to come out of Zelensky's mouth. So, Mark, brilliant call. One of your best. I'm telling you, absolutely brilliant call. Mark, as always, thank you very much for that call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just super quick because I want to go back to the phone lines. Look, there were stories during the Biden administration, and I can cite them to you. There's many of them. The Daily Mail had them, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the LA Times, whereby, to be fair to Biden would periodically blow up at Zelensky. This was reported. His aides reported this, where Biden would yell and scream at Zelensky, saying, "You are talking to the president." I mean, literally, so Biden would say to him, "You are talking to the president of the United States. Who do you think you're talking to? Don't you dare yell and scream and berate at me." Or one time, Biden just gave him $1 billion. Literally, bang, he just gave him $1 billion. And Zelensky was like, "It's not enough. More, Joey. More. And Biden said, "How about thank you?" He exploded at Zelensky, saying, "How about thank you? How about say, I appreciate it. Thank you." So my point being that even under Biden, you can see story after story, they found this guy exasperating. Ungrateful. They said it. Biden now, I'm talking Biden and his aides, said Zelensky's obnoxious, Zelensky's rude, Zelensky's insulting, Zelensky's entitled, Zelensky's ungrateful. And they're like, who does he think he's talking to? The president of the United States doesn't talk to the president of, Slovenia, which has like 1 million people. Okay, any country in the world doesn't talk to that person the way this guy talks to an American president. It's unbelievable. And I'll tell you why. Because he's a tin pot dictator with a Napoleon complex. And this guy thinks, because he's, I don't know what it is, he's got a thing about being short. As I said, my father was a very short man. He was a very respectable man, a tough guy. I mean, really, he was a tough man, a hard man. But he wasn't going around looking to pick fights. You messed with my dad, you were going to be in trouble. Grace's dad was quite short. Construction guy, worked hard. You didn't mess with him. But they weren't looking for fights. This guy's always looking for a fight. He's always got to do his tough guy routine. And I don't know if he gets off on it. I don't know if I don't know if he's got some kind of an inferiority complex. I don't know what this guy's problem is. And frankly, I don't care. But you don't talk to anybody like that. Any world leader like that. Never mind, not just the President of the United States, but to the country that has kept your nation literally afloat. You should be, thank you, kissing his hand. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Trump, thank you. Mr. Vice President Vance, thank you. To the cameras, American people, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Without America, we would have lost this war. And then people say, okay, let's talk. But this guy, you are going to be fighting Putin soon. Your troops are going to be dying soon. You should be feeling how bad we Ukrainians feel. I'm like, whoa, don't tell us what to feel. Don't tell us what our interests are. Don't speak on our behalf. Like, who the hell do you think you are, man? Jose in Quincy. Thanks for holding, Jose, and welcome.
Everybody stand back, make room. Caller of the week is going to make his points. How are you?
You go for it, Jose. Seriously, go for it, my friend.
Jeff, I put a suit on to make this call because I have more respect for Kuhner country than Zelensky has for the Oval Office. I got a suit on, Jeff. All right. Listen, I took one look at Zelensky when he sat down, and I knew he wasn't going to sign. He was fidgety. He was, like you said, all the body language. Now, there's an old adage. You're never going to be as young as you are today. It applies to all of us. He's never going to do any better than he could have done if he signed that minerals deal. The best, his legacy is screwed no matter what, because he's going to lose territory and he's going to lose the minerals if he signs.
Can you please do me a favor, Jose? This is a really good call. Hang on, I'm up against a hard break. Jose says Zelensky is now screwed no matter what he does. We'll pick it up on the other side. Don't touch that dial. 850 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Let's go right back to Jose in Quincy. He's on a roll. Jose was making the point, and I thought it was a very good point. Jeff, you're never going to be younger than today. Well, Zelensky is never going to have an opportunity like he had on Friday in terms of making peace, saving his country, stopping the war. That ship has essentially now sailed. And so, as Jose was laying out, no matter what Zelensky does, he is now essentially screwed himself. Please, Jose, pick up where you left off.
Hold on, let me adjust my tie in the mirror. Okay, we're looking good. All right. What I was trying to articulate is that, again, you're never going to be as young as you are today. He had an opportunity. I mean, he's screwed no matter what. His legacy is finished because he's going to lose territory. And I want those minerals, Jeff. Anyways, had he signed, the way it seems to me is Putin is going to kick back and let Trump negotiate this thing and take it to Putin, and he's going to decide, do I not like? He's in Crimea already, correct?
Yes.
He's in the Donbass already, correct?
Yes.
So he's going to, it seems to me Putin's going to say, yes, peace, but I'm keeping the territory. You keep the minerals. And what does Zelensky get? He gets peace and less destruction for his country. He's going to have a whole European community to help him rebuild. So every day that goes by, the deal gets worse and worse for Zelensky. So he should have just not listened to the Democrats, not listened to anyone, and he should have signed that agreement. And the best line in that whole meeting was when the reporter asked, what if Putin breaks the deal? And Trump said, what if a bomb falls on your head right now? Oh, I fell off the chair, Jeff. I fell off the chair. What say you, brother? What say you?
Listen, Jose, you're a contender for Caller of the Week. I'm telling you, man, you are on fire. No, look, I think you put your finger right on it. They're trying to blow up the deal many ways, but one of the biggest ways, and it was so obvious, the media was really coordinating with the Democrats and the globalists. They don't want, and the deep state, the military industrial complex. They don't want the war to end. So how are they trying to blow up the deal? Well, you're right. Now it's, well, what if Putin breaks the ceasefire? Well, what if Putin waits 6 months, rebuilds, and attacks Ukraine again? Then what? Then what? Then what? And Trump was making several arguments. He was making, number one, he won't do it under my watch. I kept him in a box in my first term, and Putin himself admitted he never would have invaded Ukraine the second time in 2022 had Trump been in power. So he's like, he fears me, he respects me, he knows not to mess with me. Now, to be fair, right, to be fair to Zelensky, he then turned around and said, yeah, but what about after you? In other words, okay, fine, Putin maybe will, okay, he'll respect the deal for 3 years, 3.5 years, 4 years, but what about who comes after you? Now, Trump's argument, and I think this is what many people in MAGA I don't think quite understand, the minerals deal, in some ways, is a massive concession to Ukraine. Yes, we get the rare earth, the lithium, and we need it for our military, for technology, for AI, for our economy. Yes, yes, yes. That's all true. But as Marco Rubio, in fact, Lindsey Graham said it. I'm going to use Lindsey Graham's words. That's why he was so angry with Zelensky afterwards. Graham comes out and says, someone needs to check Zelensky's head. He goes, Trump was willing to make, and then he looked at the reporters, and he emphasized, $500 billion investment in Ukraine. $500 billion that would then be split with the Ukrainians 50-50 on the most precious thing in the world right now, rare earth minerals. We're going to have American companies there, American workers there, American investment there. It would economically anchor the United States in Ukraine. It would economically tie us, tether us to Ukraine. So Graham is saying, like, doesn't Zelensky understand? Pretty much we're going to have to backstop the Europeans because economically it'll be so much in our self-interest to do it. So if you've got British forces, French forces, German forces, Polish forces, European forces, hundreds of thousands of them, protecting the ceasefire, is Putin now going to risk going to war with all of Europe? With massive American dollars at stake in Ukraine? Of course he's not going to do it. He'd be crazy to do it. So it's as close to an absolute ironclad security guarantee as you can possibly get. That's why Lindsey Graham, this is what he said. He's unstable. This man is not a good investment for America. This is Lindsey Graham. This is the biggest supporter of Ukraine, the biggest warmonger in Congress. And he's like, I don't understand what the hell is wrong with this guy. This puts all of Europe in Ukraine and the United States in Ukraine. So, now, look, I don't know. Yes, a madman could come to power in Moscow. A madman could launch a nuclear weapon into Ukraine. I don't know. We can't read the future. But it anchors Ukraine to the United States. It anchors Ukraine to the European Union. You put all these European peacekeepers there. What else do you want, man? Like, seriously, what else do you want? He doesn't want a deal. In the end, he doesn't want a deal. Jose, dynamite call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, very, very quick. This is one of the best exchanges, one of the most honest exchanges, where Trump really put Zelensky in his place. So Zelensky keeps arguing, right? He won't stop arguing. And so this is what shocked J.D. Vance and Trump. They weren't expecting this. And so J.D. Vance says, look, almost like, what is wrong with you? Like, does the elevator go to the top? Just say thank you. Like, this is like diplomacy 101. And whatever disagreements we may have or whatever concerns you may have, we can talk about it. And J.D. even puts his hand out, like, to the door behind where they're talking. Like, we're going to go in there to have a lunch. Like, this can all be talked about in private. Why are you litigating this in front of the American media? Because he wanted an American security guarantee. And getting an American and he wanted Trump to give one in front of the cameras of the world. And by giving Ukraine a security guarantee, that would trigger a war between Russia and the United States. That's the game that Zelensky was playing. Listen now to this unbelievable exchange. Roll cut 7A, Mike.
Just say thank you.
Said a lot of
except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards. You're buried there. You're people are dying. You're running low on soldiers. You're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our.
See, now, he keeps saying, give me guarantees, right? So he wants Trump to say, okay, I'll give you a guarantee. Like, damn it, like, shut up. Like, let's stop the killing. That was Zelensky's, he was trying to bait Trump to make a commitment that he would never make, and he doesn't make, and he shouldn't make, which is a security guarantee to Ukraine. And so, but he's trying to bait him. And that's why Trump is looking at him almost like, where's your humanity? Buddy, I'm offering you peace. As he put it, the bullets stop flying, your men stop dying. What is wrong with you? Now, listen to this. So Zelensky's claiming, no, I don't want a ceasefire. My people want to fight to the bitter end. My people want to fight Russia to the bitter, bitter end. Roll cut 7B, Mike.
People about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't with me. That wasn't with me. That was with a guy named Biden, who was not a smart person. That was with Obama.
It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
Now, you can't see this, obviously, because it's an audio clip. At that point, where Trump then says, I gave you the javelins, which is true. That's what cut down all those Russian tanks in the early days of the invasion in February 2022. They were marching towards Moscow. And it was Trump that armed Ukraine to the teeth. And they were firing javelin after javelin, destroyed tank after tank. He goes, I gave you the javelins. He goes, look, I'm not talking about Biden. I'm not talking about Obama. I'm going to be dealing with Putin. Then Zelensky rolls his eyes. Like he's mocking Trump. Like, boy, you really think well of yourself, huh? And he's like, yeah, right. Like, okay, Trump. Yeah, right. And that afterwards, Rubio, others were saying, we couldn't believe the gall of this guy. We couldn't believe the gall of this guy. Now, listen to this exchange. Because again, they go back to it's what one of the previous callers said. This is where Zelensky keeps saying, but what if the Russians break the ceasefire? What if the Russians break the ceasefire? And it's asked by a reporter. A reporter also said, but answer his question. What if the Russians break a ceasefire? Now, the media, the globalists, want Trump to say, I'll nuke Russia. That's what they want him to say. I will go to war against Russia, which would be essentially a declaration of war. Roll cut 8, Mike.
She's asking, what if Russia breaks the ceasefire?
But what if anything? What if a bomb drops on your head right now? Okay? What if they broke it? I don't know. They broke it with Biden because Biden, they didn't respect him. They didn't respect Obama. They respect me. Let me tell you, Putin went through a hell of a lot with me. He went through a phony witch hunt where they used him and Russia. Russia. You ever hear of that deal? That was a phony Hunter Biden, Joe Biden scam. Hillary Clinton, Shifty Adam Schiff. It was a Democrat scam. And he had to go through that. And he did go through it. We didn't end up in a war.
He makes a very good point, by the way. All of the slandering of Putin, that Trump was his puppet, the Kremlin interfered in the elections, that led to all these sanctions. That could have been a casus belli, honestly, for the Russians. The Russians would have said, this is all false, this is garbage. And now you're sanctioning us? Now you're accusing us? Like, Trump's point is, do you realize the fire you idiots have been playing with for the last 10 years? Let me play one more and I want to go to the phone lines. He then turns to Zelensky. And then he's very candid. I think this is the most candid moment, okay? Where he says, let me tell you the problem. We've emboldened you. We've given you so much money and so many weapons and the potential now for this minerals agreement whereby you're going to be holding a lot of cards because you'll now have a tremendous economic financial backing from the United States. You think now you're this tough guy. Again, they've created a Frankenstein's monster. And Trump is like, listen, buddy, you're a beggar. Don't overestimate your influence or your authority or your power because it could be a deadly, deadly miscalculation for you and for your country. Roll cut 8B, Mike.
The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing. All right, I think we've seen enough. What do you think? Huh? This is going to be great television, I will say that.
So he's trying, and to his credit, Trump was like, trying to put a positive at the end. Hey, it's been great TV, and and that how he's cutting. Basically, look, in diplomatic speak, he told him to go blank himself, to go blank off. And he just said, look, you're nothing without us. Let's stop it now. Okay, I'm going to cut you off at the knees. You couldn't win this war without us. You couldn't be holding Kiev without us. You couldn't be holding 80% of your country without us. And let me tell you right now, if I walk away and if America walks away, you're going to lose. You're going to lose more ground, more lives, more territory. You're going to lose more cities. You're not being smart and you're not being appreciative. And he's telling him, and this is the thing you can see on Trump's face, like, I've gone as far as I can go. I'm going to give you the minerals agreement. We're going to be economically all in with you. We've got the Europeans to provide a ton of security. We're going to sell you a lot of weapons. Putin will be armed to the teeth. You're going to be armed to the teeth. What is wrong with you? Well, look, I don't normally quote Megyn Kelly. I just don't. Nothing against her personally. I don't tend to quote other podcasters or other hosts. I prefer to quote stuff from the audience because it's the best audience in the business. But look, I think Megyn Kelly on this is 1,000% correct. I think there's no question about it. This is what she wrote on her X account. And I think she's completely right. See how it works. Connecticut Democrat Senator Murphy meets with Zelensky prior to Zelensky's Oval Office meeting with Trump and Vance. He urges Zelensky to reject the deal, thereby sabotaging the peace agreement. Then when Trump calls out Zelensky's grandstanding and disrespect at the meeting that was supposed to be celebrating the deal, Trump is a Russian agent. And right on cue, Murphy goes on CNN and says, quote, "The White House has become an arm of the Kremlin." So, the guy that wants to end the war, save Ukraine's bacon, end the slaughter, end the possibility of World War III, is now the bad guy because he called out Zelensky for being an absolute ingrate. This was all planned. Murphy and the Democrats met with Zelensky, and they told him, blow up the deal. Just blow it sky high. And that's what Zelensky did. And now the Democrats and the media are going to use the talking point of some, I don't know how you get from that to this, because believe me, no one has been more anti-Putin than Trump. No one. As I said on X last night, it's irrefutable. Under George W. Bush, Vladimir Putin invaded and annexed parts of Georgia. Under Obama, Putin invaded and annexed chunks of Ukraine, Crimea being the big one. Under Joey, Putin invaded and tried to conquer all of Ukraine. Under Trump, Putin invaded no one and has been contained every step of the way. But they want their talking point that he's a Putin of he's a puppet of Putin. And that's why they wanted to blow up that deal. And if you want to see how sick and twisted these people are, they would rather see millions more die, millions more maimed, millions more exiled and put as refugees, millions and millions more lives destroyed in order to try to sabotage and undermine Trump. Those are the kinds of psychopaths that we're dealing with. Chris Murphy is a sick, twisted puppy. I'm telling you, this guy's not right in the head. This war is now on Biden's hands. It's on Zelensky's hands. It's on Murphy's hands. It's on the hands of the Democrats. They want this war. Now they're going to have their war. 9:20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. You know, Sandy just made a very good point to me off air. One of the people that Zelensky allegedly met with or spoke with prior to his meeting was Trump. Wasn't just Vindman. Wasn't just Anthony Blinken. Wasn't just other diehard never-Trumpers. Victoria Nuland, obviously the architect of the overthrow of the Ukrainian government in 2014. But also with Susan Rice. As you know, very big in the Obama regime. Susan Rice was the one who came out and lied to the American people on television about what happened at Benghazi. So these are the kinds of scumbags and traitors and liars that Zelensky has surrounded himself with. And I'm telling you, not only is it destroying his reputation, he's going to take Ukraine down with him if he's not careful. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Gardner in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Gardner, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
Two things I want. Sure, you got it. Two things I want to bring up just briefly. Because I've been watching this since basically October of 2013 when they started to try to push out Viktor Yanukovych. First, Chris Murphy, Amy Klobuchar, and others like John McCain, they were all on the stage in early 2014 as Jeffrey Pyatt and Victoria Nuland worked to knock out Yanukovych and cobble together their puppet government, along with, on that stage, Ole Tjanibak, the Nazi leader of the Sloboda Party. So there are photographs. Everybody, if anybody want to look it up, his first name is spelled O-L-E-H, Yanukovych, Ole Tjanibak, Tyanabok, and he's a Nazi. And there are photographs of him shaking hands with Joe Biden, hanging out with Chris Murphy. And Chris Murphy, the other part that I would like to bring up is Chris Murphy, along with Bob Portman, the Republican senator from Ohio, were the first people to introduce the Portman-Murphy so-called Countering Foreign Propaganda Act of 2016. And they utilized that to fund $150 million over 2 years to various media organizations to push, you got it, the Russian propaganda canard. So that funded things like NewsGuard, it funded things like the Virality Project at Stanford University, the Global Engagement Center that Matt Taibbi and Michael Schellenberger have written about so much. So this goes way, way back, and it's tied to Nazis. And if anybody wants to deny it, they don't know what they're talking about. The entire substructure of this is connected to the Atlantic Council and very, very corrupt figures that go way back to 2016.
Oh, you're dead on. You're absolutely dead on. And Gardner, just to piggyback off of what you're saying, look, the reason why they pushed out, he was pro-Russian, but he was democratically elected, that Ukrainian President Yanukovych, was because they wanted to turn Ukraine largely into a base for the CIA to engage in massive money laundering, bioweapons research. That was their goal, and to use Ukraine as a kind of Trojan horse to provoke a war with Russia. That has been the ultimate goal of the deep state. They don't, and the reason is this: a Cold War with Russia plays right into the hands of communist China. That's what people keep missing over and over. This is what Trump understands. That's, to me, his strategic genius in all this. Trump, yes, he wants to end the killing. Yes, it's for humanitarian reasons. Yes, he's heartbroken. Really, you can see it on him, to see all of these lives lost and all of these Ukrainian and Russian soldiers being slaughtered. And yes, he doesn't want to keep pouring money into that conflict because he thinks it's just a waste of money. Much of it being stolen, graft, bribery, embezzled, kickbacks. But ultimately, he realizes this is a massive distraction from the real threat to our country, which is communist China. And so that's why he wants to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, get peace, and if he can, detach Russia from China. Because he realizes that the great military economic powerhouse that we're going to face for the next century doesn't come from Moscow. It comes from Beijing. Am I wrong, Gardner?
Well, I might have a different take on that, because many of the same people who have been rattling the sabers about Russian collusion and things like that are the very same people who are building up tensions between the United States and China, adding more bases in the Philippines, opening up a base in Australia, sending weapons the way Pelosi flew over to Taiwan. I wouldn't exactly agree with you on that one. I think a lot of these stories about China and the existential threat of China are based more on economic dislike than they are on actual security.
No, on that we agree. Yeah, no, please, Gardner, don't mistake me for wanting to put more bases or wanting to get into a war with China. The exact opposite. I mean their infiltration of our country, the massive trade surpluses that they run against us, how they're bribing and buying politicians. I mean stopping China in terms of its nefarious influence here in America. 9:30 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull, or in this case, the globalist bull. Listen now to Lindsey Graham, rhino warmonger extraordinaire, the biggest, staunchest defender and champion of Ukraine and unlimited Ukrainian military financial assistance, not just in the Senate, in Congress. He and Zelensky, by the way, are friends that go back years. Listen now to Lindsey Graham. He comes out after the Oval Office blow-up between Trump and Zelensky. He had lunch with Trump, and then came out and talked to the media. This, believe it or not, is a huge watershed. Roll cut 32, Mike.
What I think? Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelensky this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of J.D. Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. I think most Americans saw a guy that they would not want to go in business with.
He threw Zelensky under the bus. He threw Zelensky under the bus. Now, I'm not praising Lindsey Graham. I'm just telling you, when you've lost your premier champion and advocate in Congress, hell, you've lost the arch warmongering globalist, the guy who's Ukraine first, Lindsey Graham, when he tells you you blew it, when he tells you you're not a solid investment, i.e., there's something wrong with you in the head, it's over. You can't. How does Zelensky come back from this? He can't. In fact, here, one more cut. He's asked point blank by a reporter, does Zelensky need to go? Does Zelensky need to resign? I never thought I'd hear these words from Lindsey Graham. Roll cut 32A, Mike.
Do you think President Zelensky needs to resign to resume these peace talks?
He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Well, he's not going to change. So what you're starting to see now is that the globalists are beginning to realize this guy's a very bad bet, and he's a very bad investment. 617-266-6868. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but this really bears repeating. If Ukraine and Zelensky have lost Lindsey Graham, you've lost Congress. And now you're up a creek without a paddle. 617-266-6868. David in Boston. Thanks for holding, David, and welcome.
Yeah, hi, Jeff. Hey,
hi, David.
Jeff, I think I can give Kuhner country and MAGA additional insight into the exchange between dictator Vladimir and President Trump. And this is what it is, Jeff. When I watched that exchange, Jeff, between in the Oval Office between Zelensky and President Trump, I actually had flashbacks to my childhood, to my school day boyhoods, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. When I was a schoolboy, I had a principal, Mr. Donovan, in the Boston Public Schools that I heard this expression from, and I also heard the expression I'm going to tell you from Sister Superior up at St. Angela's Catholic Church in Mattapan Square. But this is the expression that Mr. Donovan and Sister Superior, they used to say to us mischievous kids. We were like a bunch of mischievous leprechauns. And they'd say, listen, if you don't listen, you're going to have to feel. If you don't listen, you're going to have to feel. And Mr. Donovan would have the rat back. I go back to the days of corporal punishment, and he used to soak the rattan bamboo stick in vinegar, and he'd whip the tips of our fingers, because if we didn't listen, we were going to have to feel. We were going to have to feel that rattan on the tips of our fingers, and it really hurt you. And Sister Superior really meant it. She used that same expression. If you kids don't listen, you're going to have to feel. And that meant, the Board of Education, Jeff. So, why President Trump's probably old enough, he's probably heard that expression. If you don't listen, you're going to have to feel. So when Zelensky said to President Trump that basically, hey, if you don't listen to me after the Russians are done with us, they're coming for you. If you don't listen to me, you're going to have to feel. You're going to have to feel. He was using that expression. If you don't listen to me, Trump, you're going to have to feel. And President Trump, he's probably familiar with that expression. If you don't listen, you're going to have to feel. And that's why it brought out such a reaction in President Trump.
I agree. David, very perceptive. Very, very perceptive insight. I have to tell you that. No, he was basically, maybe threatening is a bit of a strong word, but it was a borderline threat. That's what he was. It was a subtle threat. It was, look, Putin's going to wrap your knuckles. That's what he's going to rack your knuckles. Rack your knuckles. In other words, yeah, today it's us. Tomorrow it's going to be you. It's going to be your boys dying. And you have no one to blame but yourself. And Trump was like, whoa, hey, don't threaten me. Don't bully me. Don't tell me how I should feel. Don't tell me what I should do. You're in no position to dictate to the United States how we should respond to Russia or not respond to Russia. So, look, I got to tell you, Trump bitch slapped Zelensky. That's what he did. And Zelensky has no one to blame but himself. He was an impertinent, insolent, arrogant little punk. And he asked for it, and eventually he got it. David, thank you very much for that call. Now, it's breaking everywhere, just so that you know, but this is like the fourth time with this guy. So, it's like crying wolf. So, because remember now, 3 times he's refused to sign the deal. 3 times. He said he was going to sign it at Munich and told Rubio to his face he was going to sign it. Then he broke his word the next day. He then told Scott Bessent to his face he was going to sign the deal, and then the next day he broke it. He broke his word. Well, and then he was supposed to be at the White House. He was there to sign the deal, and then there was no deal. So apparently now, after talking to Starmer and Macron and the British and the French and the Europeans, Zelensky now has issued a statement, I'm ready to sign. I'm ready now to sign the deal. Nothing from the White House. So at this point, I agree with the previous caller. We're going to FedEx it to you. No meeting, no cameras, no. We're going to FedEx it to you. Sign on the dotted line. No additions, no addendums, no changes, no edits. I want your signature here, your initials here, your signature there, and thank you. Otherwise, no deal. So he's now saying he's willing to sign. We'll see. We'll see. 617-266-6868. I'll tell you why. Because he's catching hell back home. That's why. His own people are saying, what are you, crazy? You left with your tail between your legs. Now go back to Trump on your hands and knees and beg him to sign the deal. 617-266-6868. Mike in Newburyport. Thanks for holding, Mike, and welcome.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks so much for having me on. You know, it's all theater with this Zelensky guy. You know, the cameras are all honed in on him, and he's looking for an opportunity to grandstand. And thank God he's starting to catch hell back at home. I think the public's going to start really turning against him. And Trump, you know, good on him. He recognized what this guy's trying to do, and he says, you know, thank God the cameras are in the room to catch this utterly disgusting behavior from you, and we're going to call this a diplomatic meeting. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's, at this point, you know, he's painting the psychological profile of somebody who just wants the nukes dropped right on him. It's like, you know, you give him out a cookie and he'll come back begging for nukes. It's just Trump's looking down the barrel of this Nobel Peace Prize. The Dems can't have that. They got to keep the lights on at Raytheon. And it's just, I thank God that you're covering this with such candor and honesty, because it's like, you know, I don't know. I just leave it to Boston's bulldozer to bring some sense into the conversation. The Zelensky impression needs a little bit of work, but it's in pretty decent shape. I owe you a huge debt of gratitude in general. I'm a longtime listener, and I appreciate the way you're covering this.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Look, not just to Mike, to all of you, do me a favor, okay? Mike, how much time left? Okay. Do me a favor. Don't take my word for it, please. It's all over YouTube. Punch in Zelensky, put in dancing, singing, whatever. Just put it, you know, and you're going to see what kind of guy Zelensky is. Where he's dancing in shows with wearing like artificial female breasts. Where he used to do an act with several other comedians in which he would play the piano, but he'd be naked from the, like literally completely butt naked from the waist down. And then part of his shtick was, after he played the piano butt naked, he would then, his private part, he would then like flash it to the audience. This is the kind of guy, this comedian clown, vulgar comedian clown, who the Ukrainians have as their president. 9:48 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, this is a bit of a really nice, pleasant surprise. Alexandra from Montreal, Canada, is calling me. She is the daughter of one of my dearest late friends. He was really my mentor, Professor Jerry Kalibay, Yarema in Ukrainian. Professor Kalibay, Jerry, my buddy, passed away about maybe 17 years ago now. And he was a man of Ukrainian descent, a brilliant conservative, a brilliant professor, a proud Ukrainian patriot. And so Alexandra, I believe, disagrees with me on my whole take regarding Zelensky, Ukraine, and Trump. Alexandra, do we have you? Are you on the phone?
Yes. Hi, Jeff. I'm here.
Okay. Great to hear from you, Alexandra. Haven't heard from you in such a long, long time.
I know.
And I know you strongly disagree with me. So go ahead. Please, you have the floor, Alexandra. Tell me, why is the Kuhner man wrong?
Well, I just wanted to remind Kuhner man and anybody else who's listening right now, if everyone can listen to this brilliant quote that I've held with me for many, many years now, which puts an emphasis on a different kind of clown, okay? Because I think there's Trump and there's Zelensky and there's all of those details. But let's not forget exactly who Vladimir Putin is. And a very wise, brilliant man once said, Vladimir Putin, the Russian dictator, is a murderous former KGB thug who is nostalgic for a monstrous totalitarian regime responsible for the deaths of more than 40 million, including the genocidal terror famine known as the Harvest of Sorrow, which claimed between 7 and 10 million Ukrainian lives. So let's just not forget exactly not only who is the clown, but let's just not forget exactly who we're dealing with in this situation, and that this is the monstrous totalitarian dictator that we need to deal with. And I think the emphasis that you and this sort of brand of MAGA are putting forth are focusing absolutely on the wrong person, on the wrong issues. And we can absolutely never forget, never forgive the kind of monster that Vladimir Putin is. Let's not forget who the monster is. Okay, Jeff?
Alexandra, I'm just curious. Who is that brilliant man? I mean, that is such a well-written, powerful paragraph that you read there. Whoever wrote that's an absolute genius. Who wrote that?
Agreed. And I think you remember who wrote that, right? In 2013.
So you're saying that was one of my columns at the Washington Times, correct?
Yeah.
So, Alexandra, look, Putin is a war criminal. Putin is a conqueror. Putin is in many ways a modern-day Tsar. He's waged a brutal war of aggression against Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. There is no debate or doubt about that. Ukraine did not invade Russia. Russia invaded Ukraine. What I want to ask you, though, is this. Leave aside all the context of the build-up to the war and all of that. As someone of Ukrainian descent, and obviously you feel very passionate about the Ukrainian cause, at this point, 3 years in, millions dead, maimed, displaced. Where is the end game for Zelensky and the Ukrainian people? You're dying by the thousands. It's now trench warfare. You can't win this war. The only thing now available is for Trump to claw back as much territory as possible and give Ukraine some kind of peace with honor. Where am I wrong, Alexandra?
I think that with the proper allies and continued resources and NATO, they can win. And they have to win because you don't negotiate with terrorists. You don't negotiate with Hamas. You don't negotiate with Putin. You don't negotiate with China. We don't set that precedent. We stay on the right side of history, as hard as it is.
But, yeah, I mean, that's nice. I agree with you in theory. But, Alexandra, think about it. How many more Ukrainians are going to have to die? And you say we'll get back every inch of territory. But will they? I mean, we've already plunked 350, 400 billion into this war. Putin has expanded his gains. He's got 20% of Ukraine. He just walked away. Zelensky just walked away from a big deal, the mineral rights deal. He may lose all American support. Without American support, Ukraine may lose Kiev. They may lose everything. So at this point, do the best that you can, save as much of Ukraine as possible, and end the bloodshedding. Because in the end, Alexandra, if this war goes on for another 2 years, another 3 years, another 4 years, in all honesty, there may not be a Ukraine left.
American isolationist perspective, because I think, again, the missing part of this narrative is that, yes, this is a particular deal and this is this particular moment, but historically, America also has a lot to lose.
Well, let's say Putin grabs eastern Ukraine, okay, the Donbass, and he keeps Crimea. In the end, look, it's bad for the Ukrainians. I get it. But in the end, what is it in America's vital national interest over which flag flies over the Donbass or Crimea? The Ukrainian blue and yellow trident or the Russian blue, white, and red eagle? In the end, what's our vital interest? We have no vital interest.
Well, Trump's vital interest is the art of the deal. So if for him it's a purely business transaction.
Well, sure. I mean, he's trying to make a deal. I understand that. But Alexandra, what I want to ask you as a Ukrainian patriot, as someone of who's of Ukrainian descent and you love Ukraine, you're going to lose millions of more lives. And in the end, for what? You may not even get back any territory. Are you willing to do that? Trump is the man trying to make peace and save what's left of Ukraine. Alexandra, I think this is a deal Ukraine has to take, because I think the next deal will be even worse. It'll be a deal dictated by Putin. But on that note, the show's over. Bye-bye.